Welcome to the Becoming Sound podcast, where we dive into the tough stuff and try to find the humor in the hot mess of being an adult child. Join me as we peel back the layers on growing up in dysfunction, navigating substance abuse, mental health challenges, and everything in between. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Becoming Sound podcast. I'm Krista, your host, and I just want to thank you so much for sharing a part of your day with me. I am so grateful, and if you're new here, welcome to my little corner of the podcast world. I am really glad that you're here. If this episode today resonates with you, please give us a follow. A rating and a review would be amazing. And please share this episode with someone that you love, because it really does help to boost the content and reach more people who might need to hear this. So today I have Angie Hawkins on the podcast, and she is the inner glow coach and an author who is passionate about transforming overachieving women from chasing love and approval to radiating fierce confidence so they can finally feel happy, free, and loved for who they really are. Angie moved from Chicago to Hawaii solo to align her life with her purpose and joy. Her adventurous spirit has led to some pretty incredible moments, from skydiving and bungee jumping to running 16 marathons. She has even jumped out of a helicopter, Navy SEAL style. Yet Angie admits she still has a fear of allowing herself to be seen. And I think so many of us can relate to that for sure. Angie's story isn't really about breaking or being broken. It's about what becomes possible when the facade finally falls apart, and she knows what healing looks like when honesty replaces perfection, and what happens when a woman decides that she is done abandoning herself. So let's get started with Angie. So hi, Angie. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Krista? Thank you for having me.
I'm good. Thank you for being here. And you're joining us from Hawaii, sunny Hawaii.
Yes.
I've never been, but I'd
Oh,
love
I
to
highly
go.
recommend.
Yeah, it's my mom's like dream trip, but we haven't we haven't got her there yet. So we'll hopefully. But yeah, that's gorgeous. A lot nicer than it is here, I can tell you that. Okay, so I want you to just kind of dive in and tell my audience just a little bit of background and what led you to what you call a breaking point or the dark place for you.
I always take it back to the very beginning
Hmm.
because for most people, our limiting beliefs were formed in our childhood, if not in our formative years. So some people, it's at their teenage years. But for me, I grew up in a home. The best way to describe it is that both of my parents were extremely emotionally unavailable. So as an adult, I understand what that means and can interpret and think about
Hmm.
it logically. But as a child, you don't have those kind of resources. So the way I interpreted the situation is I developed a belief that I didn't deserve to be loved. And as you're probably aware, your beliefs dictate your behaviors, and then that dictates what you bring into your life. So I struggled for a very long time because I was a people pleaser. I was always chasing love and approval outside of myself. I was a perfectionist. Had impossible standards for myself, and I would beat myself up if I didn't meet those standards. And anyone who has either one of those tendencies or both knows that it's a very exhausting way to live. And I
Hmm.
wasn't happy and fulfilled, but I really didn't know any other way. So the first turning point came in 2017. My boyfriend broke up with me, and then my dad passed away, and I was plummeted into profound grief. And I was 37 at the time, and I had spent 37 years trying not to feel my feelings, avoiding my feelings, repressing my feelings. But I was just in so much grief that it was impossible not to feel my feelings.
Hmm.
But I also didn't have the tools to really process any of that. So it was just like this floodgate of feelings and me not knowing what to do with it. So I basically spent the rest of the year feeling like shit. And that was enough for me. So in the beginning of 2018, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I was like, okay, I want to make some changes in my life. I want to be happy. I was living in Chicago at the time, and I decided to move to Hawaii. which was well intentioned in that I was actually being proactive and trying to take agency over my life and do something to be happy. But it wasn't well intentioned because I was still searching for things outside of myself to be
Yeah.
the thing that made me happy. So I moved to Hawaii, and you cannot move away from your problems.
No,
So it was basically
unfortunately, no.
it was still the same thing in a different environment. It was just nicer weather. And not only that, I developed this whole new set of problems. So, for example, it was 2018. It was before remote work was the trendy thing to do. But my job fortunately allowed me to move and keep my job. But
Mhm,
right when I moved, there was this huge management shakeup that threatened my role. So, the first year that I lived here, I lived in constant fear of losing my job. I
mhm,
also had a really hard time making friends, which was something that I hadn't experienced in Chicago. And being thousands of miles away from anyone I knew, it just felt very lonely and isolating, especially because I was working remote and wasn't interacting with anyone in person
mhm,
at work. And the other major thing that happened within the first few months of living here is I bought a condo immediately, which, if that wasn't stressful enough, a month after I closed, a shared building pipe backflowed into my bathroom sink and I
oh,
wasn't
no.
home. So my entire condo flooded. So this was
Yeah,
all within the first few months, which is a lot.
it's a
And
lot.
then for the next 2 years, it was just like I couldn't catch a break. It was like thing after thing after thing. And because I was reaching for things outside of myself to be the things that made me happy, in my internal world, first of all, it was already pretty unstable, but
Mhm,
my internal world started to unravel. And then COVID happened, so that just exacerbated everything. And then the straw that broke the camel's back was the end of a relationship during COVID.
mhm,
And I think we all have these moments in life because I've had this happen more than once where it's like I have this feeling like I can't take this anymore. When does this
yeah,
end? And so I was definitely feeling that. But layered on top of that feeling was just this sheer feeling of hopelessness because
mhm,
nothing had been going well. And the worst part was, I truly did not see any hope for the future, which is such a dangerous place to be. So
yeah,
I intentionally overdosed on my anxiety medication. And I spent a day and a half unconscious in my bathroom. I
oh,
spent
wow,
another day and a half in the hospital, and I was released from the hospital. I came home and I called a friend and told her everything that happened. And I ended with, "I can't believe I didn't die." And her response was, "It's not your time." And it sent a
mhm,
cold chill down my body. And it
mm,
was like exactly what I needed to hear because I was kind of at this crossroads because I felt worse than I did before I took the pills. And then she said that, and I was like, I think she's right, and I think I have a purpose, and I want to figure out what that is." So that was, the true turning point.
yeah, no kidding. Well, I'm glad you're still here,
Thank you.
and it really is a tough place to be in when you have lost hope, and I think for people who can't really understand or comprehend why people, attempt suicide is because that they've lost hope. Like, the hope
Yeah,
is gone, right? And all of the things that are happening are compounding everything,
yeah,
and, it's like a breaking point, and if there's no one there to pick you up or give you that hope, I can see how that happens, so I hope people, understand and try to sympathize with people and reach out. Um, I I wanted to talk about the breaking point. Partly because it's important to talk about the dark, and I heard you
yeah,
say that once, that you wouldn't change anything in your life.
right.
Can you speak to that and let us know why?
Yeah, because a lot of people are like, "Well, if you could go back and do something differently, or if you could go back and tell yourself something kind of like
Oh,
as a forewarning." And I don't think I would because I was avoiding my path for a long time
uh-huh,
I will say moving to Hawaii, because people look at me now and they see this confident, brave person. That's not who I was when I moved to Hawaii. So
uh-huh,
there were times when I was like, "Okay, I'm, like, stepping in who I'm meant to be," but then there was this other part of me that, like, still didn't feel worthy of living
Mhm.
this, like, even the first year that I lived in Hawaii, because I came from Chicago, it's, like, all business Monday through Friday, and then you only have fun on the weekend. So, the first year that I lived here, I would not do anything fun during the week because it was just,
Mhm.
like, that was kind of my routine from living in Chicago. Also, I didn't really feel worthy of it because if
Mhm.
I would go to the beach on a Wednesday after work, I would just feel so guilty. So, and I
It's like multi-layered conditioning.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because it was like I had the conditioning from the belief that I didn't deserve to
Mhm.
be loved and also just like the hustle culture from
Yeah.
Chicago. So I wasn't stepping into who I was meant to be. And even because once I moved here and I realized, because there were moments where I had this awareness, like, you can't move away from your problems, and I realized that I was just recreating the same situation in Hawaii, and I remember, like, I did go to a healing intensive, and I was trying things, but it was just kind of half-hearted because, for example, the one healing intensive I went to, it was really impactful and profound, but it
Mhm.
was the week before my condo flooded. So I had this
Mm.
week of like, and anyone who's gone to like a seminar or something, you
Yeah.
have that week where you're like riding high
I
from
can
like
do
the
this.
motivation and stuff. But then you have to like actually implement what you learned.
Yes.
And then my condo flooded. So like all of that just went out the window. And it
Yeah.
was basically just information that I wasn't using.
Yeah.
And I was, like, in this victim mentality, so there were, like, significant things that I needed to change in my life, and I didn't have the motivation to do it, or even if I did get this spurt of motivation, I was too scared to do it, and in hindsight, even, like, the timing of my dad dying, like, it all just came together, like, if I look in hindsight, even just the timing of everything, it happened
Mhm.
so perfectly to line me up, and yeah, there was a moment where I could have made a different choice, but I think I would have just ran into more obstacles where I was probably just going to choose to fall back into my old patterns and conditioning.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I just needed a punch in the face. It
Yeah.
wasn't pleasant to go through,
Yeah.
but
To put
I
it
mean,
lightly, right?
yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like I'm the kind of person now, like, I actually learn better from making mistakes because it's like, "Oh,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want that to happen again." So that's kind of what happened to me because it's like I never wanna get to that place in my life ever
Yeah.
again. So I always wanna be growing and improving, and I didn't
Mhm.
have that kind of fire under my butt before. It was just kind of like, I'm just gonna shrink back and do what's comfortable."
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I wanna circle back to something you said about your dad because this is what kinda piqued my interest in the book too, because I have a very similar, not similar story, but a similar catalyst almost. It was like when my dad passed away, that was a catalyst for me, and I didn't realize how much I had been holding on to and how much I had been pushing down and putting the
Yeah.
mask on and just pretending, and when my dad died, it was like someone just cracked that facade and made me see something and all of this stuff come flooding in. Was that a similar
Oh,
experience?
absolutely, because the main thing, because my dad and I were not close. We're actually
Uh-huh.
really close now that he's in spirit, but,
Uh-huh.
like, we weren't close. I always thought I was closer to my mom, but then when he died, again, because I had always been like repressing my feelings and hiding
Yeah.
them away, but when he died, it was just, I could not stop it. Like I would be in the grocery store and just start crying because
Yeah.
I would have like these memories and flashbacks. And I really just started processing everything that happened in my childhood because it was the
Uh-huh.
first time I had really been faced with it. And it made it, one of the things that it made me realize was how toxic my relationship was with my mom, and I had never realized that before. So, yeah, it just opened things up, and then once you see
Mhm.
them, you can't unsee them.
No.
Yeah, so I
No, you
totally
can't.
relate to what you're saying, and
Yeah.
that was the first time I had ever been, like, confronted with just, like, the raw truth of
Yeah.
how my life was.
Yeah. Just for people who are struggling out there with a parent, we give so much of our power away. Like all of my stuff was being held together by my dad, who I wasn't close with either. And I had allowed him to hold all of that for me
Yeah.
and not process it myself and not deal with it. It was like I gave him the power to hang on to all of that pain. And the minute he died, there was I didn't have that anymore, and
Mhm.
I had to take back all of that pain, all of that suffering, and I had to find a way to deal with it, and that's what I think it's so interesting how when you grow up with parents who, in a dysfunctional home, whether it be whatever, addiction, neglect, all that stuff, um, so much of our pain and our suffering, we hand over to them. And
Yes.
and we don't realize it until one of them passes, what what it means to take that back and have to own it.
Yeah.
It's so profound, yeah. I really felt that. I'm partway through your book, your audiobook, so I really felt that when I was reading it because I know how you start the book is you really get right into it, right? And so
Yeah.
I see a lot of parallels coming up, so that was really powerful. Um, so I wanted to you to talk a little bit about um, the facade, like how putting that mask on and just pretending everything's okay, and what that really does leading up to breaking open.
Yeah, so from an early age, I always had the strong one mask because my parents, I never remember my parents getting along or loving each other. So from a very early age, all I remember was there being a lot of tension in our
Mhm.
household. And I would always like try to do silly or quirky things to like make them laugh or whatever. And then they would become dismissive of that, and
Yeah.
I've just kinda learned to play a role, and that
Mhm.
role usually because I have big feelings, and that role usually meant suppressing my feelings because my parents didn't have the emotional capacity to deal with that, and I never really felt I guess the best way to describe it, I never felt allowed to be me,
Mhm.
so I had to suppress a lot of things about myself, including my emotions. I didn't feel safe to have my own emotional experience of things. And I didn't feel safe to like talk about that with my parents or express myself. So I remember my room was my safe haven because it's like,
Mhm.
to my family or whatever was going on, I always had to have that facade of like everything's okay, it's fine, but then I could go to my room and have my own emotional experience. But again, like that's lonely and isolating to go through that
Yeah.
yourself, but going back to conditioning, because that was my conditioning, I just carry that through for the rest of my life. So
Mhm.
it's like I would always make sure like I wanted to look like I had it all together on the outside, even though I didn't. And I had very chronic anxiety for a very, very long time. And that didn't go away until I dropped that facade because it's exhausting to live that way. And also,
Mhm.
just the huge disconnect between portraying something to the outside world versus who you really are as a person. It just yeah, I had so much
Yeah.
anxiety.
It's
So,
exhausting.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, I don't
exhausting.
even know how else to
Yeah.
describe it other than exhausting.
Yeah, like you get home at the end of the day and it's almost like you've been carrying the weight of the world and
Yeah,
behind this mask and you don't even know how to drop it anymore. Like you don't even
right.
know how to completely let it go. So it takes so much energy to keep up that strength, that what you think is, you need to do in those
Yeah.
moments. So completely understand. So when you drop the mask and start to become vulnerable and really try to piece together that authentic self. What does that look like for you, and how did that kinda happen?
Well, for me, it started so after I had that conversation with my friend and she said it's not your time, I was like, okay, I want to get help and I want to get help the right way. So I invested in myself. I hired a coach. And basically the work I did with him was changing my behaviors because my behaviors used to be in coherence with people pleasing and being a perfectionist and those
Yeah.
kind of things. But I learned how to set boundaries, and how he always described it was being a functional adult, which seemed ridiculous as an adult to learn how to
Yeah.
be an adult. But as we would talk about things, I'm like, oh, first of all, this makes so much sense. Second of all, this is way easier than how I was living my life before. So I felt kind of
Yes.
ridiculous for not living my life that way before. But anyway, as a result of changing my behaviors over time, my beliefs started to change. So I started
Mhm.
to believe like I do respect myself, I do trust myself, I do deserve to be loved. And I think through finding self love is how I also found my true identity. Because when your identity is wrapped up in things outside of yourself, that's not who you
Mhm.
are as a person. But, when you like truly love yourself, you're connected to yourself and you just start acting. And it's not even acting, you are that identity because that's who you
Yeah.
authentically are.
What are a couple things that you would suggest are kind of foundational to really digging into that self-love?
Oh,
It's
no.
it
Yeah.
sounds fluffy, right? Oh, let's just all self-love ourselves and stuff. It's not easy and it's not that simple. So what are some of the components that you need to get there?
Well, the first component is you really need to face your shadows because for me, I really had to face the fact that because of my beliefs and because of my behaviors, the things that were happening to me were, I guess I no better way to say it. It was my fault because I was,
Yeah.
like when you're a people pleaser and you're over giving, you're going to attract takers. That's just the way it is, whether they're being malicious or not. Because I was just talking to someone the other day, and the way I described it is I don't consider myself a taker, but if there was someone handing money out on the street, like, yeah, I'm going to take some.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So people
Yeah.
aren't necessarily like maliciously taking from you. So you have to understand how you're attracting things in your life to be
Mhm.
able to change that. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. That is not easy. So you
Yeah.
have to really face some facts about yourself, which includes going back to your childhood and figuring out where those limiting beliefs actually came from. But in
Mhm.
terms of more foundational things, for instance, what I use in my coaching program, number one is because my current coaching program, it's called Shine from the Inside, and it's based
Mhm.
on this concept that we're all born with this light inside of us. And, you see kids, they're running around and
Yes.
screaming and they don't care. But we go along life and our family
Mhm.
systems and society or whatever tell us what we should or should not be doing.
Mhm.
And then we're conforming to these things outside of ourselves and it's disconnecting us from that light. And a lot of self help, I feel like, is marketed, or the messaging is you need to fix
Mhm.
yourself or change who you are, but it's really about coming back to that light. So, a really easy way to rekindle that light is my rule for life, and I recommend this to anyone, is do at least one thing a day that brings you joy. Because as an adult, we get conditioned to like work, errands,
Yes.
adulting, and we're not doing the things that bring us joy. But even just doing one thing, even if it's for 5 minutes, it conditions us to one, feel good, and two, understand that we deserve that in our lives. Because I think like society's conditioning is like, oh, you shouldn't feel good because like this is life and this is how it is, but like why
Yeah,
not?
we forget how to play. As a whole, everyone has a hard time as an adult really connecting to that childlike play.
Yeah.
I think that's so important because that's our joy is in there.
Yeah, so that's a amazing start. There's obviously other things. Like I'm big on boundaries, connecting to your
Mhm.
intuition because a lot of times we're giving our trust into things outside of ourselves, but when you're
Yes.
connected to your intuition, you can trust yourself. So there
Yeah.
are And that's another thing because with coaching, it's absolutely a process and takes time, but there are some quick wins that you can have right off the bat. Like
Mhm.
usually people can connect to their intuition pretty fast. You can obviously start doing things that light you up pretty quickly. So there are quicker wins in the short term.
Yeah. So I want to talk about something that was on your website too, and that, there a lot of times people, they know they want to change or they feel this calling that they have a purpose, but they don't know how to find it. And especially for women in middle age. And you're like, well, I'll just read more self-help books and I'll just go to
Yeah.
therapy and nothing wrong with that. I have a therapist. I've read lots of self-help books, but there's something missing with all of that. And can you kind of pinpoint what you think is missing?
Yes, and the reason that's on my website is because that was my experience. So, for
Right.
example, in my 30s, I read a gazillion self-help
Mhm.
books, which I'm not knocking self-help
I
books.
did too.
My issue with self-help books is it's a lot of good information, but they're written for the masses. So
Yeah.
when it comes to actually implementing that information in your own life and your own
Mhm.
circumstances, it's especially if you've never had therapy or had coaching or anything, it's kind of like,
Right.
okay, what do I do with this? Or similar to what I was saying before, maybe for a week you have some motivation to like implement some things, but then when something gets hard or there's an
Yeah.
obstacle, you're not sure how to navigate that. And then it's just kind of like, oh, this isn't for me. And then you're on to the next book. So
Yeah.
books are hard to implement on your own
Mhm.
without someone actually guiding you. For me, traditional therapy never worked because it's like I would go to the therapist for an hour a week. We would talk and it feels good in the moment, but it's kind
Mhm.
of the same situation because it's like I go out in the world and it's like, okay, now what? And then
Yeah.
I would just kind of fumble my way through the next week until I talk
Yeah.
to her again. Or even like spiritual practices or things like that. They feel good in the moment, but they're
Mhm.
not really getting to like the root cause of the problem,
Right.
and that's the only way you can really create lasting change. Anything else is a
Yeah.
band-aid that's really only going to be short term. So I would get these short-term solutions that would last for a little bit, but
Mhm.
I just never had that fulfilling experience where it was like, okay, now I get it. I know what to do, and
Yeah.
really felt like I was like confident in my path forward.
Yeah. You just explained my entire 40s. Well, so thank you. But I honestly 100% agree. I am like a knowledge whore, honestly. I love absorbing knowledge and I love learning, and that's great. But implementing is totally different. And
Yes.
I truly believe that I love therapy. It has a place and it's definitely helps a little bit if you have to work through some deeper trauma. Um, but it was the coaches in my life who really propelled me forward because
Yeah.
they're holding your hand. They're there with you.
Yeah.
There's a step-by-step process. And it teaches you how to integrate that into your life, not just reading about it and then it slips out. I couldn't
Mhm.
tell you how many books I've read, but I can recall little tiny bits and pieces from some. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing that really like changed my life, like, but coaches did. So
Yeah.
talk about what you do now because you are an inner glow coach. Is that what?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank
So
you.
tell us exactly what you do and how you help people implement this stuff.
So, yes, I am the inner glow coach and I help women go through the same transformation that I went through. So,
Mhm.
from chasing love and approval outside of themselves to radiating it from within. And
Mhm.
again, my coaching program, it's called Shine from the Inside because it's based on not fixing yourself, but welcoming yourself back home and rekindling
Yeah.
that light. And I call it the glow method.
Mhm.
And the G stands for go back to your childhood because, again, we
Okay.
can't even begin to come up with a solution or a path forward until we figure out what your limiting beliefs are and where they came
Right.
from. Because you have the first thing you have to start doing is questioning everything you do and why you do it.
Mhm.
So G is going back to your childhood, which is the first step.
Mhm.
L is light yourself up. So again, this is something that's implemented immediately because you should immediately start doing things that light you up and bring you joy every
Yes.
single day because there's so many quick wins you can get. And then after a while, it just becomes part of who you are. O
Yeah.
stands for overcome external validation because I think we all can get caught up in this approval addiction.
Mhm.
And even me now, like I catch myself with the pull to it, but at
Yeah.
least I have the awareness and have the tools to bring myself back to myself. So O is focusing on generating that self-love and approval
Mhm.
from within, and once you have that, you will not give AF what anyone else outside of you thinks.
Yeah. I
And then
love this
W
part of my life, the not give a AF.
yeah, like, I am telling you, because again, I used to be a people pleaser, and it feels like a
Mhm.
prison because you're always chained to these things outside of yourself, and it's like, when you just stop caring and you start living by your own rules, which is also a huge part of my program, because society has all these arbitrary rules that we all blindly follow, and it's just so freeing to live life on your own terms and live life for you. And it feels a gazillion, again, like, it's like once you start doing it, it's like, this is so much easier and feels so much better. So why was
Yeah.
I struggling so hard before?
Yeah.
And W is
100%.
welcome yourself back home, which is like that freedom. Because
Yes.
again, when you're a kid, you feel that freedom because you're not
Mhm.
chained to all this external validation and things outside of yourself. Like you're lit up by your own light.
Yeah, and that key thing is you're not broken. It's like a remembering of who you are on the inside and who you were when you were younger before someone told you how to be otherwise and before you would just accept that that as fact. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I truly believe that you do need to address the stuff that's holding you back and those limiting beliefs because you can't just flip the switch if you don't understand the wiring, right? So important. So it's not a perfect road. And everybody should understand that when they see someone who is shining and who is confident and stuff now. It's not always easy. So how do you handle that fear of being seen when it comes up?
Well, it's actually a lot easier. So
Mhm.
I actually, the way I conquered the fear, because I used to think that to do something scary, it meant the absence of fear. So I
Right.
used to be the kind of person I would procrastinate because I was like, okay, I have to wait until I'm ready to do
Yeah.
the thing and not be scared. But then I learned this concept of feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So I kind of got overzealous in that phase
Yeah.
because I was like, okay, I need to like condition myself to feel the fear and do it anyway. So I went bungee jumping, I went skydiving, and I know it doesn't seem relevant, but it is because even I still have a fear of allowing myself to be seen, but I can remind myself, like, I've been bungee jumping, like,
Yeah.
going on a podcast or doing whatever, like, it's
Yeah.
way less scary. Also, I trust myself that I can feel the fear and do it anyway because I do it all the time now. So it's
Yeah.
just you just have to do it, and
Mhm.
eventually you'll be conditioned to do it. And that's why I would go bungee jumping or whatever, because that's something I chose to do. And then you're
Mhm.
not in these situations that you're not necessarily choosing, because I think that's even harder. So if you can,
Right.
and you don't have to go bungee jumping, it can be something on a lesser scale. But if
Yeah.
you, and actually, that used to be my goal, like do at least one thing a day out of my comfort zone, because then
Mhm.
that conditions you to, first of all, expand your comfort zone, but just get used to feeling that fear and doing it anyway. Because the story you have in your head about how horrible it's going to be,
Yeah.
it's just a belief. It's not a fact. And I cannot think of one situation where the huge, horrible story in my head ever even came to fruition.
Yeah.
So it also trains you
100%.
that that's just a story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's never what we tell ourselves. It's never the story. It I'm always saying to myself, "Well, why did I make that out so bad? It was that bad.
Yeah.
What was I thinking?" You know? So
Well,
yeah.
even when I moved to Hawaii, like, it took me so long to actually do it, and then I will never forget, I stepped off the plane, and I was, like, looking at the mountains because the airport has, like, a view of the mountains, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Why was I so afraid of this? This is paradise."
No kidding. I was gonna say that is just to me that's a no-brainer, but I live where we get like minus a lot, like minus a lot. Yeah, that's awesome. So you wrote a book called Running in Slippers. Like, just
Yes.
you have to explain. I know what it means, but you have to explain to my audience what the heck that means because
Yes,
you
so
have run 16 marathons.
Yeah, I have.
That's
Yeah, I used to
amazing.
be like a hardcore runner.
Yeah,
Although
I've
that's
I've not done that. I've ran a half marathon, nearly killed me. So, but running in slippers, that's I don't know. I love the title.
yeah, so as you know, the actual story about how it came about is in the introduction of the book, so I
Yeah.
won't give that away. But so I live in Hawaii and we call flip-flops slippers. So it really means running in flip-flops.
Yeah.
And running in flip-flops is a metaphor for life because running
Yes.
in flip-flops and life, it could be adventurous, playful, and fun. It could also be difficult, painful, and scary.
Exactly. I love that. Absolutely love it. It's like the best metaphor for for what happens in life. So, just talk a little bit about like where people can find you and if they're thinking about like do you do remote stuff as well? Like remote coaching?
Yeah,
Yeah.
actually, all of my clients right now
Okay.
are remote.
Okay, so how can people find you? And if they're asking themselves some questions about, well, is this program for me? Isn't it? What kind of advice would you give to like just open it up for people?
Yes. So first of all, my website is runninginslippers.com, which is also the name of my book. So there's
Mhm.
obviously information about the book. There's also information about my coaching program. I talked about it here, so I won't get into all the details and stuff are on
Yep.
my website. But I also offer a free 60-minute Find Your Glow session. And
Okay.
60 minutes is a long time. So we go into the G, which is go back to your childhood.
Mhm.
And I can't guarantee a breakthrough, but every call I've had, we have had a breakthrough. And then
Nice.
I can recommend a solution for going forward. And I'm not for everyone. My program is not for everyone. The whole point of the call is to get you help.
Yeah.
So if it's not a good fit, I can recommend you to someone else, whether it's a coach or another resource or whatever. And I know it may sound intimidating to just get on a one-on-one call with someone,
Yeah.
but my entire goal is to create a safe space because again,
Mhm.
I just want to help. And it's funny because I just had a call this week with someone and at the very end she was like she made a comment like, "Oh, this was such a safe space. I felt so safe." And I was like, "Thank you
Yeah.
because that's my entire goal."
Yeah.
So thank you for validating that.
Yeah.
So it's not about like it's not a hardcore sales call
Yeah.
because and on my side too, it's like I don't work with just anyone because you made a comment earlier. Like, if you do have really deep seated trauma, I would
Mhm.
recommend you to a therapist because I'm not
Yeah.
qualified to work. So it's also a two-way street. Like, I might not be for you, but you might not be for me. But that doesn't mean you don't need help. And like, we can at
Yeah.
least take the first step to getting you help.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that you do it 60 minutes because most coaches don't, just straight up.
Because it's a
It's a
sales call. Yeah.
15-20 minute, yeah, like you just really can't get to know someone. And I know just from doing my podcast, most of my episodes end up being close to an hour because I there's so much to talk about and people are
Yeah.
so interesting and like it's so awesome to be able to allow someone to open up and share what they need to share. And I think that's so important in a coaching call too. So thank you so much for that. And I would literally reconsider my own coaching calls because of what you said, because it is so important that you establish that space
Yeah.
for people. Yeah. It's not easy opening up and being vulnerable and just making that phone call is the first step. That's the hardest part.
Yeah, and I understand that because I feel like there are people who, like, I think I appeal to them because I see, like, my
Mhm.
website hits or whatever, but my the people reaching out to me don't reflect that number, and so I'm trying to figure out my messaging on my website because it is a safe space, and there's
Yeah.
probably a better way to put that messaging out there because I do think it can feel intimidating to just immediately have a one-on-one call.
Yeah, your website's great. I've been on it. I
Okay,
think
thank
it's
you.
really inviting, and it's bright and colorful, and like it's hard. Messaging is difficult, and just honestly, I think the message for people who are listening is when you want to make that call or reach out to someone, and literally the story you're telling yourself in your head right now is exactly what Angie and I were talking
Yeah.
about. It's not as scary as you think, and so just leaning into the fear can get you there, right? So,
Yeah. And also, that's another reason why I tell my whole backstory. Because again, I think people see me
Mhm.
now and they're like, oh, she has it all together and this and that. And like, I will be the first person to tell you, I still don't have it all together. It's definitely a gazillion times better than it used to
Yeah.
be. But it's like, I have so much empathy for where anyone is now because trust
Yeah.
me, if you're going through it, I've probably been through it too.
Yeah. I could not agree more. I don't think anyone has it all together. We're
Yeah.
always learning something new. And I think that's the greatest thing about coaching too is you learn so much from the people who come to you for help, right? Like
Yeah.
it's incredible. Every time I do a podcast or I am a coach as well. So every time I'm learning and I'm growing in in almost the same capacity as someone else. So
No, I agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's always room for growth. So I love that. And I look forward to finishing your book on audio. It's interesting and a lot of parallels for me for sure. And I will post all that in the show notes. And it's a great read. And if you feel connected to Angie, please reach out. And I'll put your Instagram and all of your links on there too. So
Okay,
I love
thank you.
that.
Also, I want to add the audio. I did narrate the audiobook. I know
Yeah.
that audiobook listeners appreciate that. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. It's awesome. I love it when the author reads it because,
That's what everyone says. So I was like, I have to read
yeah,
my own.
there is a connection piece that really sinks in when you are listening to the person who actually story that is.
And
Yeah.
it's funny because I have people reach out to me. So here's the other funny thing because it's really vulnerable and I was so terrified.
Yeah.
But I cannot tell you how many people have reached out to me and been like, "This thing happened to me," or "This is so
Yeah.
relatable." But I feel like the people who have listened to the audiobook really have that sense of knowing me. And I've actually met people in person who, like, they just start talking to me like they know me, and I'm
Yeah.
kinda like, "What?" And then they're like, "Oh, I listened to your audiobook." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. That's so true. That's that connection piece. Yeah. That's awesome. So thank you so much. I'm so glad that you could share your story on here. And I know it wasn't your whole story, but I don't want to give your book away either because it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
know, like, even the book, the original version was twice as long, and I had to really cut it down, so even the
yeah.
book isn't all the details, but it's most of the details. It's the
Yeah.
important
Yeah.
details.
Exactly. The important ones. Yeah. So thanks, Angie. And I hope we can do this again soon.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today on another episode of Becoming Sound. If this episode resonated with you in some way, please share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps to get this information out to more people who may need it. If you have a sec, I would love a follow on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. While you're there, hit the 5-star rating and give me a review. When you're scrolling, follow me on my social platforms, and I would love to hear your comments and feedback. Have a fabulous day, lots of love and gratitude from me. Please note, the views, information, and opinions expressed during the Becoming Sound podcast series are solely those of the individuals involved. The content of this podcast is to educate, inform, and for entertainment purposes only. This podcast series and the content presented does not constitute for medical or other professional advice or services. If you are in crisis or in need of help, please contact your medical or professional provider.